Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babbling Irons match preview with myself and Mike today. Bit of a tough one this weekend, Newcastle at home, but they have just got maybe the European hangover with their win against PSG. But yeah, their confidence is going to be sky high. It's going to be a tough game. Always is a tough game with Newcastle at the moment. And yeah, Mike, talk to me about just Newcastle's transformation last kind of 18 months to 2 years since Eddie Howe took charge. Obviously, the influx of cash with the new owners, and they just look like they're on the up. And beating PSG 4-1 on Wednesday kind of epitomized everything that they've gone through and where they're now at as a club.
Yeah, there's a lot to, I would say, be jealous of in some ways. I think some West Ham fans wouldn't be that bothered by it and don't see the jealousy in it. For me, I like to see attacking football and positive football from minute one to the 90th minute. So there are aspects of our play that I don't always enjoy. However, we've scored some sublime goals this season. So let's be honest, we've scored some absolutely brilliant goals. But there's a lot to look at Newcastle and say, that's the type of football that I think many West Ham fans, especially old school West Ham fans, would say, well, that's the football we grew up on and we like to see. And I think Newcastle and West Ham have always been quite similar in that respect of the old school idea is you go out and you play football regardless of opposition. And
Yeah,
what we've seen with Eddie Howe, and it's what he did at Bournemouth, it was sometimes deemed as gung-ho, sometimes deemed as naive, but it was you go out to try and attack every game. There's no point just trying to sit behind. And there is levels of what they do that it still has that level of pragmatism, but they've completely removed and kind of separated themselves away from that kind of dour, mindset that they had under Mike Ashley and to appoint Steve Bruce. And in fair play to Steve Bruce, I'm pretty sure he said at the time that when the owners came in, they were willing to keep him. However, he was like, look, you're on a crest of a wave of positivity. I'll step aside and you can bring and carry that on with someone else, which takes a lot for someone who actually supported their club as well in Bruce. And what Eddie Howe has done, he's taken this, sorry, baby's making noise, from this pragmatic defensive team into one that's been kind of unshackled.
Well, I mean, you look at the table so far this season. We've got Newcastle just below us on 8th. We're in 7th. They still don't even have a draw, so that kind of sums up what you were saying, where they'll go all out if they're drawing a game to win the match, or they'll also try and go for it, but they might lose a game. But the losses they've had this season, they've lost to City. I think they lost to Brighton as well away, which was a bit of a shock result, but not also because Brighton are doing very well. And yeah, if we take a look at Newcastle's kind of stats so far this season as an overview. So they've played 7 games, scored 18 goals in those games. I think that was heavily inflated by the 9-0 they beat Sheffield United by a couple of weeks ago. And then they've only conceded, they're averaging 1 goal conceded a game. Considering the opposition they've played so far, and it's not actually that bad. And yeah, 12 assists is not really relevant. But yeah, it's an interesting matchup. We're also doing well. We're just above them in the league in 7th. We've had a tough run in as well. So how do we kind of get at Newcastle? What's the best way to approach this? Because they do have some injuries. They do have some suspensions, the likes of Barnes. So what's the best way to approach it? Is it, being compact and trying to counter? Or is it maybe going at them a bit higher up the pitch and maybe catching them off in terms of, not doing what they expect us to do?
Yes, I think with Newcastle, we've got a number of injuries to the first team players. So Harvey Barnes is currently out. Sven Botman is also injured. I believe that Anthony Gordon has a ban for 1 match. Then you've also got Joe Littleton and Callum Wilson are also doubts for the game. So that's, big players in terms of Newcastle that are actually out for this one. So, I think they got up to 5 to 6 potential first teamers not available. However, with Newcastle, as we saw with PSG, that's not necessarily a problem.
Yeah.
Again, it's because of their positivity, and they're a team that can kind of play in multiple ways. They've got those kind of big, strong, gritty players that can kind of try and grind out results. Lascelles came in and done a good job against PSG. He's been pretty much completely out of the picture for Newcastle for the last, 18 months. Really hasn't really been a main figure. And Shah is a decent player as well. Kieran Trippier is going to be vitally important that we manage to stop him. So down their right hand side is going to be a massive job, because we've got Kieran Trippier and you've also got Almiron. So we're probably going to play the same, I think, as we have in other games. We're going to play with that same kind of midfield five, which, okay, I can understand why he wants to do that. But as we were saying, we probably need a little bit more dynamism.
I think this is the perfect game, isn't it? And we saw on Thursday night, Kudus was so good at, picking the ball, turning, finding those pockets of space. And against Newcastle, if we're going to try and counter-attack, having him in there could be massive for us.
Yeah, and Antonio's got a potentially injured as well. So I dropped you guys the message on WhatsApp saying our new dynamic front three could be Paqueta, Bowen, and Kudus. I genuinely believe that could be the way forward. And I think, in all honesty, we have to abandon the idea that Bowen can play as a centre forward. It just seems to be predicated on the fact that he makes good movements on that right-hand side and he can finish. However, it seems to ignore the fact that he's not great at holding the ball up in a central role. Yeah. And he doesn't necessarily have the instinct centrally to then make those runs in behind. Against Freiburg, there were so many opportunities where he could have gone in behind, but he's come short. And that's because it's a winger's mentality. You come to the ball or you show down the line when there's an opportunity in the channel. So I don't think he works centrally. However, I think if you have, say, Paqueta or Kudus in that role, you've got two players who are better at holding up the ball. They're far better at linking play. And in terms of their passing ability, I think they're much stronger than Bowen. And what it would do, especially if you play Paqueta, the way to kind of think about it is you could utilise him how Liverpool utilised Firmino. Firmino, before he signed for Liverpool, was an attacking midfielder. He wasn't a centre forward. However, when he went to Liverpool, he became that player who then became essentially the metronome for that front three. He was the player who dropped into midfield to link play and allow Mane and obviously Salah to then do the outside to inside movements. And I think if you do that, that could really work. And Paqueta, I think if you put him in the centre and then utilise Kudus on the left, them two will rotate so much. And then Bowen will start to rotate. And that'll then start to make it really difficult to manage. Apologies for the baby.
It's all good. So yeah, we did see it the other day when Paqueta played in the middle. We experimented for the last 20 minutes against Sheffield United. So I think it could work as well. It depends then where does Kudus or Bowen go, because if we then have to shift Kudus out to the left, and haven't seen him out on the left yet, and I feel like his best position is kind of inside that right 8 channel on that other side, just because of how he drives with the ball and likes to cut inside onto his left foot. So I think it's an interesting one. With Antonio, we don't know if he's going to be fit, but I'd rather see something like that than Danny Ings. That's what I'd rather see, because we're not going to get Mubama. So
for me, I just don't want to see Bowen as a centre forward. I know some people will say he can do it. To me, he can't.
I think he can. I just think he has limitations to how he can do it.
That conversation we've had before about they're an honest player. I think he's an honest centre forward. He'll run about, but he loses what he's good at. The moment we put Bowen right wing against Freiburg, he came alive.
Yeah,
obviously he was vital in the first goal, but however, that was him taking up a position he normally would, arguably, if Antonio was there. He would kind of come into that channel if he can, and then make that run into the wing.
Yeah, no, I think it's a tough one. I think because we don't really have another right winger as well, it makes it more tough. So to have then put Bowen in as a striker, it makes it even worse, because then who are you going to play right wing? That you have to play someone like Kudus there, or someone
played
else.
Right wing predominantly last season for Ajax. So
it's just not his best position. Like I remember seeing he played right wing against in his first game for us in the Europa League this season, and he just seemed to want to drift into central areas a lot. It kind of seems to vacate that space.
He's a Bowen type player, because he's a left-footed footballer who wants to get involved in play. So he's going to do those movements, which is And I think he's probably a player that is more astute centrally than Bowen because he's played there a lot more. Yeah, I just think he's a much more astute player when it comes to playing central. And what we saw with Paqueta at Lyon was he actually understands how to play centrally. And he was really good at making those runs in behind and is intelligent. He has good hold-up play. And probably for Moyes in some ways, he also said it, he's absolutely magnificent, but he frustrates the hell out of him because he does things that Moyes isn't comfortable with. That's the point. It's not that Moyes doesn't like what he does and doesn't appreciate when he tries to do these, holding up, trying to hold off 3 or 4 players or etc. It's that it's not something Moyes is comfortable with.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a tough one for us to be in. I think Newcastle's going to be a tough game anyway. Whether we try something different, I don't think Moyes will do that. I think Antonio will probably be fit enough to play the first 45, 60 minutes anyway. So I think it'll be like Souček coming back in.
It's a player that is so integral to our play. And but yeah, for me, it's a risk to play Antonio if he's not fully fit. Because as we know, he's had hamstrings like cheese strings for many a year, and it's not worth the risk just for one game to rule him out for potentially a month or 2.
Let's end this preview because we're being dictated, as you said before. But I think the main point from this is, it's going to be a tough game. Newcastle may have that little bit of a hangover from Wednesday. Such a high against PSG, then to come and play in the Premier League against us is, it's going to be tough for them. But I'm sure, Eddie Howe will be reiterating that into them that, this is a must-win for them as well. They have to focus on the Premier League as well as these moments. So, yeah, we had a good Europa League win as well. So we've only got a couple days turnover, 1 day less than them actually. So we may have a little bit of grogginess in our play, but I don't know. I'm never confident playing Newcastle, especially at the moment, just because of the way they play with intensity, and we often don't really go match up very well against intense teams. But the counters are there. I think, with the injuries, like you mentioned, they don't really have a left winger now. If Joe Linton isn't fit, I'm not really sure who they're going to play. So they might have to put Isaac out wide if Wilson's fit in the middle. So, yeah, I think we have the options, probably have more options than them off the bench and stuff if we need them. And we might be a little bit fresher than them just because of how much emotion and energy they put into Wednesday night. So that could play in our favor. But yeah, I think we'll do very well to win. I think a draw is more realistic. So I'm probably going to say something like a 2-2 draw. And yeah, that's my prediction. What about you, Mike?
Newcastle have always done us on the counter. In the last few years when we played them, they've done us in the counter. I can see this being a tight 2-1. I don't necessarily see a draw. To your point about Newcastle haven't got many draws this season.
They haven't got any draws, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't see it being a draw. 2-1. The way it swings, I'm not entirely sure. If we give Isaac time and space, he can hurt you. Trippier is another. You can't give him time and space. That he is the player we need to nullify, which is why I think he will go for Paqueta on that side, because the defensive work he does, to have him alongside Emerson, his main job will be to track and to essentially man mark Kieran Trippier. If we can keep Trippier out of the game, then I really think we can do some damage. My issue is we don't have really any pace in that left-hand side, and that has really kind of come a cropper for us, and it's going to put a lot of it on Emerson to get forward. And again, the problem is then Almiron. If they play it quickly into that side, he has such good pace. Granted, we have Aged, who's very good, but in terms of recovery, there's a lot of things that kind of worry me that they can displace us. And I think that they may potentially turn up and actually look to frustrate and actually hit us on the counter, as opposed to being really aggressive and coming out at us because it's not St. James's. I think that they may actually see it as we're a team that struggles arguably to break teams down when they're, kind of defensively resolute and tight. And they have the players that can really work well within that. And then they have the pace in which to exploit us on the counter. So I can imagine Eddie Howe might have in his mind, let's essentially exploit West Ham for what they struggle in.
Yeah.
breaking down the low block and defending quick transitions. And I can see that being the pattern of the game because Newcastle, as I say, do have a number of injuries, so they might have to play slightly within themselves in some respects. But yeah, I just would like to see Kudus. I know we said it before about do you drop Souček? I think we're coming to that stage now where Kudus in the last few games is really starting to show how much of a high quality player that he is. That Moyes is going to have to come to a decision very soon as to drop in one of two players, and one of those two players is going to be Antonio or Souček, because essentially by dropping Souček, you can move Paqueta inside, you can put Kudus in that position, or if he has to and he wants to keep Souček, then the only other option is from the front three, which is Paqueta, which is currently because he's left side, Bowen right side, is then Antonio. His place in the team is uncertain. So this is the decision, and maybe this is the game where Moyes makes it.
Well, it might be forced, like we said with Antonio. He could be out injured. So if that is the case, I do think that is the best way to do it, rather than bringing in someone like Danny Ings at striker, where we know that's not going to work. So hopefully, hopefully we can get something from the game and show a good performance as we go into the international break. And we've only lost a couple games this season to Liverpool and City, so it'd be good to keep the momentum going, really. And if we could get a win over Newcastle, that would just be massive going into the international break and coming outside the end of October. So let us know what you guys think in the comments down below. Give us your predictions. Do you think we're going to have enough to beat Newcastle? Do you think it's going to be similar to last season where we got absolutely trounced 5-1? Let us know in the comments what you think. And hopefully we can get something, because it would be nice to keep the momentum going. But that's going to be all for today. Make sure to leave a like on the video, and comment down below your thoughts and predictions for the game. And Mike, thanks for joining us. Thank you for your little one for joining us.
She's got a lot to say.
yeah, exactly. But thanks guys, and until the next one.
Come on, you Irons.